Okay, so let's unpack this. We're looking at a document today that, well, if you were just skimming it, it really just looks like a dry, straightforward encyclopedia entry.
Right, it's just a lot of data.
Exactly. It's the metadata, the vital statistics, and the discography surrounding one single song, George Jones's 1987 country track, I Turn to You.
Which, on the surface, might seem like a strange thing to focus on.
Yeah, if you are listening to this right now, you might be wondering why on earth we are dedicating an entire deep dive to a single, somewhat obscure track from 1987.
It's a fair question.
But here's the thing about metadata. It never tells just one story.
No, it really doesn't.
When you look closely at the charts, the release dates, the creative teams, and then you zoom out to look at the massive, decades-long discography that contextualizes this one release.
You don't just see a song anymore.
Right, you see a perfectly preserved snapshot. It's this snapshot of a legendary artist hitting a sudden, totally unexpected wall.
It's the exact moment the tectonic plates of the music industry shifted.
And that is exactly why we are focusing on this today.
Absolutely. And I want to speak directly to you, our listener, for a second. Our goal here isn't simply to deliver a dry history lesson about a piece of 1987 country music.
No, not at all.
We are using I Turn to You as a magnifying glass. We are going to look right through it to understand the broader life cycle of a monumental career.
Because there's a real tension there.
There is. The central tension we are going to explore is a completely universal one, whether you work in music or tech or business or any other field, really.
What happens when a giant, someone who has just dominated their space for decades, suddenly finds themselves displaced by the next generation?
How does an industry signal that a changing of the guard is happening?
We are going to see all of that unfold through the journey of George Jones and this one specific 2-minute and 38-second release.
It's a fascinating microcosm.
I think everyone can relate to that feeling of the ground shifting beneath them. So let me just lay out the roadmap for how we're going to navigate this today.
Sounds good.
First, we are going to put I Turn to You under the microscope. We'll examine the specific anatomy of the track, the heavy-hitting talent behind it, and the really evocative B-side it was paired with.
The B-side is crucial.
It really is. Next, we're going to look at the chart numbers, specifically the U.S. Billboard Hot Country Singles chart, and we'll discuss why peaking at number 26 was considered a definitive downturn.
Which is a whole industry story in itself.
Exactly. Then we'll dive into the cultural shift that caused that downturn, the rise of the new Traditionalist movement, and the Randy Travis factor.
The young guys coming in.
Right. After that, we need to contextualize 1987. So we're going to zoom way out and analyze the colossal, decade-spanning discography provided in our source.
We have to see the mountain he built before we can understand the fall.
Beautifully put. We won't just be reading titles, though. We'll be looking at the themes that defined his career before and after this moment.
There's a real evolution there.
And finally, we'll look at the surprising afterlife of I Turn to You, how the passage of time completely changes how we value art.
It is a phenomenal arc. We are taking a micro piece of data and really expanding it into a macro view of an artist's legacy.
Okay, let's jump right into section 1, the anatomy of a 1987 single.
Let's do it.
Looking at the raw data, this track was released on May 16, 1987. It was the third single pulled from an album titled Wine-Colored Roses.
Released on the Epic label.
Right, Epic Records. And the first detail that truly stands out to me here is the runtime. It clocks in at exactly 2 minutes and 38 seconds.
It's incredibly brief.
In an era where we often see, sprawling epic tracks or extended mixes, there is something really striking about an artist conveying a complete emotional narrative in just over 2.5 minutes.
The economy of time there is, well, it's a lost art in many ways.
Yeah.
2 minutes and 38 seconds leaves absolutely no room for filler.
Yeah.
Every single chord change, every lyric, every vocal inflection has to be mathematically precise. You have to hook the listener, deliver the story, and exit before they lose interest.
But that brevity makes perfect sense when you look at the architecture of the team behind it.
What's fascinating here is that this wasn't some experimental indie project.
No, not at all.
If we look at the creative credits, I Turn to You was a highly structured, top-tier industry product.
The pedigree here is just staggering. The song was written by Max D. Barnes and Curly Putman.
Heavyweights.
And it was produced by Billy Sherrill.
Exactly. You are looking at a completely well-oiled machine.
Right.
In the Nashville system, you often have a very distinct division of labor.
Yep.
You have the performer, who is the voice, the persona, and then you have the architects behind the glass.
The writers and producers.
Right. Max D. Barnes and Curly Pittman were established massive songwriters. Their job was to craft the blueprint.
And they knew what they were doing.
They absolutely did. And then Billy Sherrill was one of the most defining producers in country music history.
He was a titan.
He was known for crafting these massive, polished, structurally flawless soundscapes.
So when you have writers of this caliber handing a blueprint to a producer of that caliber,
Who then hands it to a vocalist with the legendary status of George Jones.
the expectation for success isn't just a hope, it's practically a guarantee.
You're expecting a hit, period.
And that expectation makes the eventual fate of the song so much more interesting.
It does.
Because they didn't miss the mark because the song was poorly made. It was crafted by the absolute best in the business.
Flawlessly executed.
And you can see that craftsmanship even in the packaging. Let's talk about the B-side for a second.
Oh, the B-side is amazing.
The document notes that the B-side to I Turn to You was a track titled Don't Leave Without Taking Your Silver.
Just grammatically, that is a phenomenal title.
It is. It's not a vague emotional statement like, I don't know, I'm sad you're leaving.
Right, it's not generic.
It is a specific logistical command wrapped in a domestic dispute.
It grounds the emotional devastation in a very gritty, tactile reality.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the silver represents the accumulated wealth of a relationship. It's the wedding gifts, the inherited family heirlooms. It's the physical weight of a life built together.
Yeah, that's so true.
By saying, "Don't leave without taking your silver," the narrator is essentially demanding a total erasure.
A clean break.
Exactly. They are saying, if you are going to break this apart, take every physical reminder of our union with you.
It's a devastating image before you even hear a single note of the music.
It really is.
I want you to imagine being a consumer in 1987. You walk into a record store, you buy this physical vinyl single released by Epic Records.
You hold it in your hands.
Right. On the A side, you have I Turn to You, this tight 2.38 focal point. And then you physically flip the wax over and you are confronted with Don't Leave Without Taking Your Silver.
The physical medium itself forces you to interact with these two distinct, heavy narratives.
It is such a tangible piece of history, pushed out into the market by a massive label backed by elite writers and producers and fronted by a legend.
Which brings us to the harsh reality check.
Yeah, the downturn.
Because all of that pedigree, all of that brilliant titling, all of that elite production was about to collide with a rapidly changing market.
Let's transition into section 2 and look at the chart performance. This is where the story takes a sharp turn.
A very sharp turn.
The data from the U.S. Billboard Hot Country Singles Chart shows that I Turn to You peaked at position number 26.
And over on the Canadian RPM Country Tracks chart, it peaked at number 40.
Now, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
If I am a layman and you tell me my song is the 26th most popular country song in the entire United States for a given week,
You're thrilled.
I am popping champagne. That sounds like a massive hit.
It does.
But the source text explicitly states that this performance, and I quote, heralded a downturn for the singer on the country charts, failing to make the top 25.
Right.
Why is hitting number 26 viewed as such a devastating failure by the industry?
It's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of how the music business operated in the 1980s.
How so?
Missing the top 25 by one spot isn't just a matter of a bruised ego. It is a structural barrier.
The structural barrier.
Yeah. In the architecture of music distribution back then, there was a massive functional cliff between position 25 and position 26.
What do you mean by a functional cliff?
Well, think about how people consumed country music in 1987. Yes, local DJs had some autonomy, but the real power lay in syndicated radio programming.
The big national shows.
Exactly. The big national weekend countdown shows that blanketed the country from coast to coast. Those shows typically only played the top 25 or sometimes the top 40, but the cutoffs were rigid.
Ah, I see.
If your single is sitting at number 25, you are included in that national broadcast. Millions of people hear it on a Saturday morning.
Which drives them to the record store.
Which boosts your sales. Which pushes you higher up the chart next week. It is a self-sustaining engine of momentum.
So if you are at 26?
If you are at 26, you are locked out of that national syndication. You don't get the weekend bump. The momentum stalls. You are essentially invisible to the largest promotional engine the industry has.
That is brutal.
That is why the text calls it a downturn. It's not just a drop in ranking. It's the moment the algorithm of 1987 radio shuts you out.
It is the algorithmic wall of the analog era.
That's a great way to put it.
You don't just lose one spot, you lose the entire amplification engine. I want you, the listener, to really internalize what that feels like.
It's a heavy realization.
Think about your own career, your own passions. Imagine you have been at the absolute pinnacle of your field for decades. You know exactly what you are doing.
You've mastered it.
You assemble the best team possible, the best writers, the best producer. You execute the project perfectly. And then the market metrics shift just slightly.
Just by a fraction.
And you miss the crucial threshold by one spot. You hit 26 instead of 25. And suddenly the industry looks at you and says, the dominant era is over.
It is a profoundly jarring experience. And it raises the immediate question, what changed? If the song was good and the team was elite, why did the algorithm lock them out?
That brings us perfectly to section 3. Our source text gives us the exact cultural context for this chart performance.
The shift in the wind.
Exactly. It states that this downturn reflected broader changes taking place in country music at the time. Specifically, it points to the rise of the new traditionalist movement.
Noting that younger country artists were beginning to dominate radio airplay in 1987.
No, we have to pause here. New traditionalists.
It's a funny term.
That is an absolute oxymoron. What does that phrase actually mean in the context of 1987?
It's sort of a contradiction, isn't it?
Right. If the audience wanted traditional country music, why wouldn't they just keep listening to George Jones? He is arguably the most traditional voice the genre has ever produced.
That oxymoron is the key to understanding the entire era.
Okay, break it down for us.
To understand the new traditionalists, you have to look at what happened in the years immediately prior. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, country music went through this massive pop crossover phase.
The urban cowboy era?
Exactly. Yeah, the urban cowboy movement, where everything became very polished, very Hollywood. It was all string sections, mechanical bowls, and pop-oriented production.
It lost its grit.
Eventually, as always happens in music, there was a cultural backlash.
The pendulum swings back.
The core country music audience started saying, we miss the fiddles. We miss the pedal steel guitar. We miss songs about heartbreak and drinking. We want the tradition back.
So the demand for tradition was real.
Very real. But, and this is the crucial part, radio programmers and record executives are eternally obsessed with youth demographics.
They always want the younger audience.
Always. They want to sell records to young people. So they looked at the market and realized they needed to deliver a traditional sound, but packaged in a young, fresh face.
Ah, I see.
They didn't want the actual aging traditionalist. They wanted a 20-something who sounded like he was from 1955.
And the text gives us the exact name of the artist who became the vanguard of this movement, Randy Travis.
Precisely. Randy Travis comes onto the scene, and his voice is deep, resonant, and entirely stripped of that 1980s pop sheen.
He sounds like a throwback.
He sounds incredible.
Well.
But he is a young man. The industry found their new traditionalist.
But radio only has so many slots.
Right. It's a zero-sum game. If a station's going to add a new Randy Travis single to their heavy rotation, they have to drop someone else.
And the tragic irony of 1987 is that to make room for the young guys imitating the legends,
they had to drop the actual legends.
Wow.
The genuine traditionalists were pushed to the margins of the radio dial to make room for the new traditionalists.
That is why a perfectly executed track like I Turn to You hits a wall at number 26.
The gatekeepers had simply decided it was time for a changing of the guard.
That paints such a vivid picture of the industry politics at play. But here's where the source text provides an absolute masterstroke of a twist.
It really is a twist.
If we look further down the document, past the 1980 singles, past the solo chart struggles, we find a section titled, As a Featured Artist. And right there, plain as day, is a track titled, A Few Olda Country Boys. And the artist credit, Randy Travis featuring George Jones.
This is one of the most fascinating dynamics in the entire document. Let's really analyze what is happening here.
Okay.
The text explicitly names Randy Travis in the opening summary as the symbol of the younger movement that effectively derailed Jones's solo chart dominance in 1987.
He was the disruptor.
But eventually, that same younger artist brings the displaced legend into the studio to collaborate on a track together.
Isn't there an inherent tension there? I mean, if you are the older legend, might you be a little resentful?
You think so?
Like you took my spot on the U.S. Billboard Hot Country Singles chart, and now you want me to sing back up on your record.
You would certainly think there'd be friction, but it speaks to a very specific culture of reverence within country music and really the natural cycle of any art form.
Oh.
The younger artist comes in, captures the zeitgeist, dominates the radio and inadvertently displaces the older generation. But that younger artist, Randy Travis in this case, was undoubtedly influenced by the older artist.
He grew up listening to him.
He learned to sing by listening to those classic records. So once the younger artist secures his own power, his own position at the top of the chart, what does he do to legitimize his reign?
He reaches back and gets the king's blessing.
Exactly. He brings the legend onto a track, A Few Old Country Boys. The title itself is a statement of mutual respect and shared lineage.
It's an homage.
The younger usurper honors the very person he displaced. It transforms what could be a bitter story of permanent exile into a cyclical changing of the guard that ends in collaboration.
That's a great way to look at it.
The role of the older artist changes. They go from being the sole driver of chart success to being a revered, validating presence. But their intrinsic value to the genre remains undeniable.
That is such a profound way to look at career transitions. You might lose the solo spotlight, but you become the foundational pillar that everyone else wants to lean on.
Exactly.
Now, to truly make you, our listener, understand the sheer magnitude of the career we are talking about.
Because it is massive.
To understand why stalling at number 26 in 1987 was an earth-shattering shock, we need to zoom out. We need to look at the colossal discography provided in our source.
This is essential context. You cannot comprehend the sting of a downturn without understanding the mountain of success that preceded it.
The text provides a list of singles broken down by decade, and it reads like a masterclass in thematic evolution.
It's practically the history of the genre in one list.
I don't just want to read a list of titles. I want us to look at the eras this document outlines, starting with the 1950s.
The early years.
The text lists 18 singles just in this early foundational period. We see titles like Why Baby Why, Play It Cool Man, and I'm Ragged But I'm Right.
Classic 50s energy.
What do these early titles tell us about the persona being established?
If you look at the language of those 1950s titles, they are highly colloquial. Play It Cool Man. They are rooted in the everyday conversational vernacular of the era.
It's very upbeat.
Very honky-tonk energy. But a title like I'm Ragged But I'm Right is crucial.
Why is that one crucial?
That establishes the early persona of the flawed but genuine narrator. It's a character who makes mistakes, who might be a little rough around the edges, but who possesses a core authenticity.
A relatable protagonist?
Exactly. That flawed narrator becomes the absolute bedrock of his entire career.
That makes perfect sense. Then we see the massive mainstream breakthrough at the end of the 50s with White Lightning.
A huge hit.
But as the document moves into the 1960s, the list explodes. 26 singles listed in the 60s.
The output is staggering.
And the themes seem to shift dramatically. We go from Play It Cool Man to titles like Out of Control, The Window Up Above, Aching, Breaking Heart, and the absolute classic She Thinks I Still Care.
The 1960s is where the domestic dramas really deepen.
The subject matter gets heavier.
The Window Up Above implies distance, observation, a separation within a shared space. But She Thinks I Still Care is the masterpiece of this era.
It's iconic.
It is a masterclass in the unreliable narrator.
Explain that for the listener. What makes the narrator unreliable?
In She Thinks I Still Care, the entire premise of the song is the narrator listing all the reasons he supposedly doesn't care about his ex-partner anymore.
Right.
He is aggressively declaring his indifference. But the very act of obsessing over her, of cataloging every detail of her life to prove he doesn't care, reveals to the listener that he is actually heartbroken and completely unable to move on.
Psychological.
The brilliance of the 60s output is this layered emotional complexity. He isn't just singing sad songs. He is singing complex psychological portraits of men in denial.
And the cleverness of the writing in this era is so apparent in the titles. The text lists a track from the mid-60s called Your Heart Turned Left, and I Was on the Right.
That is quintessential country music wordplay.
It really is. It takes a directional concept and turns it into emotional devastation.
And he maintains absolute, relentless dominance on the radio with this continuous flow of material. From upbeat novelties to existential sorrow, he was the voice of the decade.
Which brings us to the 1970s. The document lists 24 singles here. This era seems to dive into absolute peak sorrow.
The dark years, musically speaking.
We see Where Grass Won't Grow, A Good Year for the Roses, Sometimes You Just Can't Win, and the Grand Tour. But there is a specific titling convention in this 70s list that caught my eye.
The parentheses.
Yes. Listen to these titles. A Picture of Me Without You. I'll Follow You Up to Our Cloud. Nothing Ever Hurt Me. Half as Bad as Losing You. These Days. I barely get by. If I could put them all together, I'd have you.
It's a very specific trend.
Why are so many of his defining 70s tracks titled with parenthetical statements?
It is a fascinating literary device adopted by the genre during that decade. The main title is often a standard Stoic statement.
I'll take a picture of me.
Or these days, it's what the narrator is presenting to the world, but the parenthesis is the whispered aside.
Oh, I like that.
It is the internal monologue bleeding through. A picture of me without you. The parenthesis holds the secret, the hidden pain that the narrator can't quite keep to themselves.
That's a brilliant way to analyze it.
By the end of the 1970s, looking at this list of titles, he isn't just a singer anymore. He has become an institution. He is the defining voice of endurance and hidden sorrow in American music.
Which sets the stage for the 1980s, the decade where our deep dive began.
And a decade of major transitions.
The 80s list starts with what many consider the absolute zenith. He Stopped Loving Her Today in 1980.
A monumental track.
That is a song fundamentally about the finality of death being the only cure for a broken heart. It sets an impossibly high bar.
And it was a massive career-reviving hit. It proved that even as he aged, he could still command the absolute center of the cultural conversation.
But looking at the 80s list in the text, there is a title that feels incredibly meta. Among tracks like Still Doing Time and Tennessee Whiskey, there is a mid-80s release called Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes?
That title is incredibly poignant when you map it against the 1987 downturn we've been discussing.
It really is.
In that song, he is literally asking the question about the legacy of country music giants. He is looking at the aging titans of the genre and asking, when we are gone, who takes over?
He's predicting the shift.
He is asking the question just moments before the new traditionalists like Randy Travis arrive to forcibly answer it.
Wow. It's almost prophetic. And the text provides a specific chronology for the year 1987, the year the downturn hit.
The pace of output is still high.
It shows the right-left hand, released in 87, followed by our focal track, I Turn to You, and then followed by The Bird, also in 87.
Look at the relentless pace of that machine. 3 singles released in a single 12-month period.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Think about the work ethic required there. Even as the source tells us that radio airplay was beginning to dry up due to demographic shifts, the output didn't slow down.
They kept pushing.
Epic Records, Billy Sherrill, the songwriters, they were still pushing out material at a tremendous rate. The machine was still running at full speed, even as the track it was running on was being dismantled.
But here is where the story pivots beautifully, and it connects back to what we discussed with Randy Travis.
That collaborative phase.
The solo chart dominance may have faced a downturn, but the source document gives us an entire separate section titled As a Collaborative Artist.
A very long section.
And this list proves that even if radio programmers were looking for younger solo artists, the industry as a whole still deeply craved his voice.
Absolutely. The collaborative era is where a legacy is truly cemented. The role shifts from solo competitor to foundational partner.
Let's look at the breadth of these collaborative partners listed in the text. We see early partnerships with Margie Singleton, but then we see a massive run with Melba Montgomery.
A legendary pairing.
The text lists 5 tracks with her, including the classic We Must Have Been Out of Our Minds.
A sustained partnership like that, spanning multiple tracks, suggests a deep, undeniable musical chemistry. When 2 voices blend perfectly, it transcends solo chart metrics.
Then the list shows collaborations with Gene Pitney, tracks like Things Have Gone to Pieces.
Gene Pitney is a fascinating addition because he brings a slightly different, almost pop-oriented dramatic flair to the table.
It's a different sound.
It shows the versatility of Jones's voice, proving he wasn't just confined to a traditional honky-tonk sound. He could hold his own in a broader theatrical setting.
We also see a major run of collaborations with Johnny Paycheck. Maybelline, you better move on, and a great title. When you're ugly like us, you just naturally gotta be cool.
Teaming up with Johnny Paycheck leans heavily into the outlaw, rough around the edges persona.
It's grittier.
It is a completely different energy than singing with Melba Montgomery or Gene Pitney. It shows the sheer range of characters he could inhabit musically.
The text also lists Yesterday's Wine and CC Waterbag with Merle Haggard, 2 absolute titans of the genre recognizing each other.
A summit meeting, basically.
But then, if we look back at the featured artists section alongside Randy Travis, there are some jaw-dropping names. Ray Charles, featuring Chet Atkins and George Jones on We Didn't See a Thing.
Ray Charles, think about that for a second.
It's huge.
You are crossing into legendary, multi-genre territory there. When an architect of soul and R&B music like Ray Charles wants you on a track, you have officially transcended the confines of country radio.
We also see Patti Loveless on You Don't Seem to Miss Me. We see Chad Brock and Hank Williams Jr. on the Y2K version of A Country Boy Can Survive.
Spanning generations.
And we even see Aaron Lewis, a modern rock singer turned country artist featuring Charlie Daniels and George Jones on a track called Country Boy.
This exhaustive list of collaborations proves a vital point that we have to underscore for the listener.
What's that?
The downturn heralded by I Turn to You, missing the top 25 in 1987, was strictly a metric of solo radio dominance.
It was an algorithmic shift.
Exactly. It was not a downturn in respect, relevance, or creative vitality. Over the subsequent decades, he became the elder statesman that everyone from his peers like Merle Haggard to cross-genre icons like Ray Charles to modern rockers like Aaron Lewis wanted on their record.
They all wanted that validation.
His voice lent an instant, undeniable authenticity to any project it touched.
It is such a beautiful realization. The Billboard charts don't tell the whole story of an artist's worth. Which brings us perfectly to the final section of our deep dive, the unlikely legacy of I Turn to You.
This might be the most fascinating piece of data in the entire document because it shows how time rewrites history.
Let's bring the timeline forward. Remember, we established that I Turn to You was released in May 1987, peaked at number 26, missed the crucial top 25 cutoff, and heralded a downturn in his solo career.
By the metrics of the day, it was a commercial disappointment.
But our source text notes a highly surprising fact about the afterlife of this song. From 1993 to 2013, I Turn to You was chosen for re-release.
And not just once.
Right. It was re-released on 4 separate compilation albums over that 20-year span.
This raises such an important question about the mechanics of the music industry.
Why keep bringing it back?
Why do record labels and distribution companies dig into the massive archives of a 60-year career and consistently resurrect a track that was deemed a failure in its original run? If they want to sell a compilation album, why not just pack it with the #1 hits?
The source names the specific entities involved in these re-releases: Sony Music Distribution, Medacity, and IMG.
These are businesses.
They're putting together products to sell during the CD boom of the 90s and 2000s. They clearly saw intrinsic value in this 2-minute and 38-second track.
It reveals how the passage of time completely changes the valuation of art. Let's look at the context.
Okay.
In 1987, I Turn to You was judged strictly as a competing commodity. It was placed on a battlefield against the new traditionalists like Randy Travis.
It was a war for airplay.
Its value was determined solely by its ability to dominate current syndicated radio airplay in that specific month. It was an algorithmic competition, and it lost by 1 spot.
But by 1993.
But by 1993, and certainly by 2013, the song is no longer competing for current airplay. The War of 1987 is over.
The context changed.
The song has transitioned from a commercial product meant to drive weekend radio ratings into a historical artifact.
It becomes an essential piece of a curated legacy. Think about the business of compilations, like those massive box sets you'd see advertised on late-night TV.
Right, the Time Life collections.
When an entity like Sony or Medacity puts together a retrospective, they aren't just looking for the top of the charts. They are trying to tell the comprehensive sonic story of the artist. They need deep cuts to fill out the narrative.
Precisely. And suddenly, removed from the pressure of the Billboard Hot Country Singles chart, the true quality of the song can be appreciated.
Because it's a great song.
It is a tight, impeccably produced track by Billy Sherrill. It is brilliantly written by Max D. Barnes and Curly Putman. It features the nuanced, flawless vocal delivery of a legend. Without the context of the downturn, it can just exist as a great piece of music.
What was considered a definitive failure in real time becomes a critical, nuanced chapter in the overarching narrative of a legend.
The compilation albums give the song a second, third, fourth, and fifth life.
It proves that a song's immediate chart peak does not dictate its permanent historical value. The market might be wrong in the moment, but history eventually gets it right.
It is a phenomenal arc. It shows that while the industry focuses on the data, the 25 versus the 26, the art itself outlasts the algorithm.
I find that incredibly hopeful. Okay, I want to summarize the massive journey we've been on today.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We started by looking at a very simple metadata entry for a 2-minute and 38-second track from May 16th, 1987. But by unpacking the data around it, we found a perfect microcosm for the life cycle of a musical icon.
The whole story was hidden in there.
We saw decades of absolute chart dominance across the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, tracing a thematic evolution from honky-tonk colloquialisms to deep domestic sorrow.
The parenthetical 70s.
Right. We explored the sudden, jarring moment of being eclipsed by the new traditionalist movement and the brutal reality of missing the top 25 syndication cutoff by a single spot.
The algorithmic wall.
We examined the profound irony and deep respect of eventually collaborating with the very artists who displaced him, passing the torch while remaining a foundational pillar of the genre.
Becoming the elder statesman.
And finally, we saw how a track dismissed in its own time was eventually celebrated, curated, and immortalized on compilation albums for decades to come, proving that great art outlives its initial chart position.
It is a remarkable narrative extracted from a handful of dates, chart positions, and song titles, and I want to leave you, our listener, with a final concept to mull over as we wrap up today.
I love when we do this.
We spent all this time looking back at the mechanics of 1987, but I want you to think about the media landscape right now.
Where are we applying this today?
Consider the media that you consume right now. Think about the music, the movies, the television shows, or the books that were released this week. Think about a piece of art that the current industry has just deemed a flop.
Something that just didn't hit.
Something that suffered a downturn because it missed the modern equivalent of the top 25. Maybe it didn't trend on TikTok. Maybe it didn't hit #1 on streaming. Maybe it missed the opening weekend box office projections.
Right, the modern algorithmic cutoffs.
Exactly. How much of what we casually dismiss today, simply because it failed to satisfy the immediate demands of shifting algorithms or current trends, will eventually be rediscovered?
That's a great question.
What failed piece of art from today will be bundled, curated, and recognized as a vital, brilliant legacy project 30 years from now? The art itself doesn't change, only our perspective and the context around it does.
What is today's I turn to you? That is a brilliant thought to end on. We might not know the answer for another 20 or 30 years, but it certainly makes you look at the current charts differently.
It really does.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I hope you enjoyed uncovering the massive, sweeping story hidden inside a single song's encyclopedia entry as much as we did.
It has been a pleasure. Remember to always question the surface metrics.
Absolutely. Keep digging beneath the surface of the statistics, and we will catch you next time.